You know how sometimes the smallest details can unravel your entire world? For me, it was a toilet seat. Something so mundane, so insignificant, that most people wouldn't even notice. But when you live alone with your wife, and you come home to find the toilet seat up when it should be down, your mind starts racing in directions you never wanted it to go. I'm 30 years old, married to Zoe for 2 years now. She's 28, beautiful, works at a marketing firm downtown. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue, one of those perfect summer evenings where everything just clicks. The chemistry was instant, the kind that makes you believe in soulmates and forever. We moved in together after 6 months, married a year later. Life seemed to be following the script perfectly. The problem, if I'm being honest, started with my work schedule. I've been pulling double shifts at the manufacturing plant for the past year, trying to build up our savings. Zoe wanted to renovate the kitchen, talked about maybe starting a family soon, and those dreams don't come cheap. So I'd leave at 6 in the morning, work until 3, grab a quick lunch, then head to my second job at the warehouse until 11 at night. It was exhausting, but I told myself it was temporary, just until we got ahead. That meant Zoe was alone most days. She'd already be asleep when I got home, and I'd be gone before she woke up. We'd text throughout the day, but our actual face-to-face time had dwindled to maybe an hour on weekends. I knew it wasn't ideal, but I thought she understood. I thought we were building something together. The first red flag should have been Will. Will Chen, 31, works in Zoe's department. Suddenly, every conversation included him. Will thinks we should try that new Thai place. Will says the housing market is crazy right now. Will recommended this Netflix series. At first, I was actually relieved that she had a good friend at work, someone to talk to during those long days when I wasn't around. But it escalated. Will had opinions about everything: our vacation plans, the type of car we should buy next, even what kind of wine we should serve at dinner parties. Zoe would get defensive if I made any comment about her constant Will references. "He's just a friend, David." "God, you're so paranoid." But there was something in her tone, a sharpness that hadn't been there before. The past 4 months had been particularly rough. Zoe seemed distant, distracted. She'd spend hours on her phone, always angled away from me. When I'd ask what she was doing, she'd say just scrolling or texting my sister. But I'd caught glimpses of the screen a few times, definitely not her sister's contact photo. She started working late more often. "Big project with Will's team," she'd explain. She'd come home around 10, claiming she'd grabbed dinner with colleagues. The stories were always vague, details that shifted if I asked follow-up questions. But I was so exhausted from my own work that I didn't push. Maybe I didn't want to know. Last Tuesday changed everything. I'd managed to leave the warehouse early, a rare equipment malfunction that shut down operations for the night. Instead of the usual 11 p.m. arrival, I was walking through our front door at 8:30. The house was dark. Zoe's car wasn't in the driveway. I figured she was still at her work dinner. I went upstairs to use the bathroom, and that's when I saw it. The toilet seat was up. Not just up, but clearly used recently. There was even a slight smell of unfamiliar cologne lingering in the air. My blood went cold. Zoe and I had lived together for over 2 years. She'd never once left the toilet seat up. Ever. It was one of those automatic habits women have. They always put it down. Always. Someone else had been in my house. A man had been in my house, in my bathroom, while I was breaking my back working 2 jobs to build our future. I stood there staring at that toilet seat for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My mind was spinning, trying to find any other explanation. Maybe a repair guy. But we hadn't scheduled any maintenance. A neighbor emergency? Zoe would have mentioned it. Deep down, I knew. But knowing and proving are different things. I needed evidence, something concrete before I could confront her. Because once you accuse your wife of cheating, once you cross that line, there's no going back. Your marriage either survives the truth, or it dies with it. That's when I remembered something Zoe had mentioned weeks ago, almost in passing. Will was selling his house. Looking to downsize, she'd said, move somewhere closer to work. And suddenly, I had a plan. The next morning, I called in sick to both jobs. Something I'd never done before, but I needed time to think, to investigate. Zoe had already left for work, kissing my forehead and saying she'd probably be late again. "Another project meeting with Will's team," she explained, not meeting my eyes. I waited until 10 a.m., then Googled Will Chen's address. Social media made it embarrassingly easy. His Facebook profile was public, full of photos from house parties and work events. There was Zoe in several of them, always standing close to him, laughing at something he'd said. How had I missed these? Probably because I was too exhausted to scroll through social media anymore. His address was in Riverside Heights, about 20 minutes from our house. A nice neighborhood, the kind where young professionals bought their first homes. I found the real estate listing online within minutes. The house was priced at $340,000, listed with Brennan and Associates Real Estate. The agent's name was Patricia Brennan. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. What was I even doing? But I'd come this far. "Brennan and Associates. This is Patricia speaking." "Hi, I'm interested in viewing the Chen property on Oak Ridge Drive. Is it still available?" "Absolutely, it's a beautiful home. Are you pre-approved for financing?" I made up some story about being pre-approved through my credit union, and we scheduled a viewing for that afternoon at 2 p.m. Patricia seemed eager. The house had been on the market for 6 weeks with limited interest. Those 4 hours between the phone call and the appointment were torture. I tried watching TV, doing chores, anything to keep my mind busy. But all I could think about was that toilet seat, Zoe's defensive attitude, and Will's stupid face in all those Facebook photos. At 1:45 p.m., I was parked outside Will's house, hands gripping the steering wheel. It was a nice place, I had to admit. 2-story colonial with a well-maintained yard. The kind of house Zoe and I talked about buying someday. Maybe that was part of the appeal. Patricia arrived right on time in a silver BMW, professional but friendly. Mid-40s, perfectly styled blonde hair, the kind of confidence that comes from years of sales experience. "You must be David. I'm so excited to show you this property. Will is motivated to sell. He's relocating for work." We walked through the front door, and Patricia immediately launched into her practiced spiel. Hardwood floors, updated kitchen, spacious living room with a fireplace. I nodded and made appropriate comments, but my eyes were scanning for evidence. The living room was where I found it. Above the fireplace mantel there were several framed photos, family pictures, vacation shots, the usual suspects. But there, right in the center, was a photo of Will with his arm around a woman. A woman with Zoe's distinctive auburn hair, wearing a dress I'd bought her for her birthday last year. My vision actually blurred for a second. The photo was clearly recent. Zoe was wearing the necklace I'd given her for Christmas. They were at some restaurant, both smiling, looking comfortable and intimate in a way that made my stomach turn. "The fireplace is original to the house," Patricia was saying, "but Will updated it with a gas insert for convenience." I pulled out my phone, pretending to take notes about the house. Instead, I quickly snapped a photo of the mantel, making sure to get that picture clearly in frame. "Will seems like a nice guy," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. "Does he live here alone?" "Oh yes, just him. Though he has mentioned having someone special in his life recently. Actually seemed quite smitten when we last spoke." The rest of the tour was a blur. I asked appropriate questions about square footage and property taxes, all while my mind was reeling. Patricia gave me her business card and said to call if I wanted to make an offer. I sat in my car outside Will's house for another 20 minutes, staring at the photo on my phone. There it was, undeniable proof that my wife was having an affair. Not just emotional, not just friendship. They were clearly involved enough for him to display their photo prominently in his living room. The drive home was surreal. I kept thinking about how normal the morning had been. Zoe making coffee, complaining about her hair, asking if I'd seen her favorite earrings. Just regular married life, except it was all built on lies. I knew I had to confront her, but part of me wanted to gather more evidence first. What if she tried to explain it away somehow? What if she claimed it was just a friendly photo taken out of context? But deep down, I knew what I'd seen. The way they were positioned, the intimacy of their body language, the fact that he had it displayed like a couple's photo, there was no innocent explanation. By the time I got home, I'd made my decision. Tonight, when Zoe got back from her work meeting, We were going to have a conversation that would change everything. Zoe came home at 9:47 p.m., almost 3 hours after her usual workday should have ended. I'd been sitting in the living room, phone in hand, that photo pulled up and ready. The waiting had been excruciating. Every car that passed, every sound from outside made my heart race. She walked in looking slightly disheveled, her lipstick gone, hair a little messier than when she'd left that morning. Details I might have missed before, but now they screamed guilt. "Hey, babe," she said, dropping her purse and kicking off her heels. "Sorry I'm so late. Will's project is turning into a nightmare. We had to order pizza and work straight through dinner." The lie came so easily, so naturally. How many times had she done this? How many elaborate stories had she crafted while I was working my ass off, trusting her completely? "Actually, Zoe, we need to talk." Something in my tone made her freeze. She looked at me properly for the first time since walking in, and I watched her face change as she processed my expression. "What's wrong? You look awful. Are you sick?" "I went to see Will's house today." The color drained from her face instantly. It was almost fascinating to watch. The way her mouth opened slightly, her eyes widening, the guilty panic taking over her features. She knew she was caught. "What do you mean you went to see his house?" "I called his real estate agent. Took a tour. Nice place, really nice photos on his mantel." I held up my phone, showing her the picture I'd taken. Her eyes locked onto the screen, and I watched her recognize herself in the photo. Her hand went to her throat, touching the necklace she was wearing, the same one from the picture. "David, I can explain." "Can you? Can you really?" "Because I'm looking at a photo of you and Will, clearly taken recently, displayed in his living room like you're his girlfriend, like you're a couple." She sat down heavily on the couch, putting her head in her hands. For a moment I thought she might try to deny it, to come up with some elaborate explanation. Part of me almost hoped she would, because then I could keep pretending this wasn't really happening. Instead, she started crying. "How long?" I asked quietly. "David, please let me—" "How long, Zoe?" "6 months." The words were barely a whisper. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of coming home to her every night while she was building a whole other relationship. 6 months of me working double shifts to secure our future, while she was planning a different one entirely. Why? It was all I could manage. She looked up at me then, tears streaming down her face, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Resentment. Actual resentment directed at me. "Because I was lonely, David. Because you're never here. Because I felt like I was married to a ghost." The accusation hit like a physical blow. I was working for us, for our future. "You said you wanted to renovate the kitchen, wanted to start a family. I wanted my husband. I wanted someone to talk to, someone who cared about my day, my thoughts, my feelings. When was the last time we had dinner together? When was the last time we watched a movie or went for a walk or just talked?" Her words stung because there was truth in them, but not enough truth to justify this, not nearly enough. "So you decided to find someone else instead of talking to me about it. It wasn't supposed to happen. Will was just a friend, someone to have lunch with, someone who listened. But he made me feel seen again, David. He made me feel like I mattered." "You did matter, you do matter. Everything I was doing was for you, for us." "No, it was for some idea of us, some future version that might exist someday." "But what about right now? What about the woman you married who needed her husband?" We sat in silence for several minutes, both crying. Part of me understood her loneliness, could even empathize with how isolated she must have felt. But understanding and forgiving were different things entirely. "What happens now?" she finally asked. I looked at her sitting there, this woman I'd loved completely, who I'd trusted with everything. The stranger who'd been living a double life for 6 months while I exhausted myself trying to build our dreams. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I really don't know. We could try counseling. I could end things with Will. We could work on this, David. People recover from affairs all the time." The hope in her voice was heartbreaking, but as I looked at her, all I could see was that photo, the way she'd looked at Will, the comfort and intimacy between them. The ease with which she'd lied to me, not just tonight, but for months. I need you to pack a bag, I said quietly. What? Tonight. Pack whatever you need for a few days. I need space to think, and I can't do that with you here. David, please don't do this. We can fix this. But I was already walking upstairs, leaving her crying on the couch. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together the same way, and I was beginning to realize that maybe they shouldn't be. The divorce papers were finalized 8 weeks later. Zoe had moved in with Will immediately after I asked her to leave that night, which somehow felt like the final insult, not even a pretense of trying to work things out, no period of reflection or remorse, just a seamless transition from our marriage to her new relationship. I'd heard through mutual friends that they seemed happy at first. Social media showed them at restaurants I'd never been able to afford, weekend trips to wine country, all the romantic gestures I'd been too busy working to provide. Part of me wondered if I'd made a mistake, if I should have fought harder for our marriage. That feeling didn't last long. 3 months after our divorce was final, I ran into Marcus, one of Zoe's former co-workers at the grocery store. He had this weird look on his face when he saw me, like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure if he should. "How are you holding up, man?" he asked, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm doing okay. Taking things one day at a time." He nodded, then looked around like he was checking if anyone could overhear us. "Listen, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I thought you should know. That thing with Zoe and Will? It didn't start 6 months ago." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it started way earlier, like almost right after you guys got married. I saw them together at that work conference in Denver last year, the one she said was so boring. They weren't exactly acting professional, if you know what I mean. Almost a year, she'd been cheating on me for almost our entire marriage. The 6 months had been just another lie, probably meant to soften the blow or make it seem like a recent mistake, rather than a fundamental betrayal of our relationship from the start." "There's more," Marcus continued. "Apparently Will didn't know the real timeline either until recently. Zoe had told him the same story, that things had been bad between you two for months, that you were practically separated. When he found out she'd been lying to both of you about when it started, he freaked out. I felt a strange mix of vindication and pity. Even Will, the other man, had been deceived about the extent of Zoe's dishonesty." "They're having problems," Marcus added. "Big ones. I heard through the office grapevine that she's been acting suspicious again. Staying late, being secretive about her phone. Sound familiar?" It did sound familiar. Exactly familiar. I thanked Marcus for telling me and drove home in a daze. That night I found myself thinking about patterns, about who people really are versus who they pretend to be. Zoe hadn't cheated because she was lonely or neglected. She'd cheated because that's who she was, someone who sought excitement and validation outside of her committed relationships, regardless of the consequences. 2 weeks later, the news reached me through another mutual friend. Zoe had been caught cheating on Will with his next-door neighbor, Garrett, a recently divorced dad who'd apparently been very sympathetic to her relationship troubles. Will had come home early from a business trip and found them together in his house, the same house where I'd discovered their photo, the same house she'd moved into after leaving me. The irony was almost poetic. Will had thrown her out immediately, and she'd had to move back in with her parents. According to my source, she'd tried to explain it the same way she'd explained our situation. She was lonely. Will was working too much. Garrett made her feel special. The same script, just different actors. I wish I could say I felt vindicated, or that there was satisfaction in watching her other relationship implode, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad for the time I'd lost, sad for Will discovering what I'd learned the hard way, and even sad for Zoe, who seemed incapable of finding happiness without destroying it. The real kicker came a month later. I was having lunch at a cafe downtown when I spotted a familiar figure at a corner table. It was Patricia Brennan, the real estate agent, who'd unknowingly helped expose my wife's affair. She was with a client, showing them property listings on her tablet. On impulse, I walked over when her client stepped away to take a phone call. "Excuse me, Miss Brennan. I don't know if you remember me, but I toured the Chen property with you a few months ago." She looked up, clearly trying to place me. Oh yes, David, right? Did you end up finding something else? I did, actually. But I wanted to thank you. That tour you gave me changed my life in ways you'll probably never understand. She looked puzzled, but smiled politely. Well, I'm glad things worked out for you. As I walked away, I realized she was right. Things had worked out for me, just not in any way I could have imagined. A toilet seat and a real estate agent had saved me from years of living a lie. They'd shown me who my wife really was before I wasted more time, before we had kids, before the deception went even deeper. I'm not sure if what I did makes me the asshole in this story. I could have tried harder to save my marriage, could have been more present before things went wrong. But I also know that Zoe's choices were her own, and her pattern of behavior suggests that no amount of attention or effort would have been enough. Sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest truths, and sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be exactly what you needed. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama. Got a take on the situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you.